All right, so today we're going to be talking about developer or owner caused construction pains. So, those who are in real estate, those who are developers, those who are owners or on the side of who has basically has the interest in getting a built space solution construction done essentially. The historical data says that owners cause the majority of the pains. We cause the changes to the scope. We cause a lot of the challenges that teams actually face. And I work as an owner, and so I see things really firsthand internal to our organization. I've been an owner's representative for a long time as well. And I see and really try to mitigate, but not everything can be mitigated. But there are a ton of challenges when it comes to decision making and how it actually ultimately impacts um, how the team works together. So that's what the conversation is about. But we don't have to necessarily limit it to construction today. We could say, hey, this is a project. How are projects typically executed, and what are the typical challenges? We can certainly talk about it from that perspective as well. So yeah, that's the topic for today. And Morale, thank you for joining. All right, looks like Colleen doesn't feel like she can contribute. That's all right. All right, so Melvin, what do you want to talk about today?
Standards, Brittany, standards,
Standards. What kind of
and
standards?
just around these vehicles basically, right? That create the conversation. So again, like if you're thinking from um, just to bring it back, to this whole concept of the information supply chain, right? So very specifically, and this is where we left off last week. We didn't get a chance to dive too deep into it, but seeing Amirali's picture down there, I was thinking, yeah, I definitely have some pointed questions that I wanted to ask him around industry standards that are used to dictate the type of data that we capture, all the fields that are necessary to be there in order for that to be considered a thing. Like, so for instance, Amirali has his request for need, right? So that whole, type of innovation that he's attempting to bring to this process. So in the request for need, like there's obviously pieces of that, that should be standardized, right? So there's obviously the person who's, or the entity that's requesting it. There's the probably some type, that of the request that is necessary to be documented. There's likely an abstract that's necessary. And so what I'm trying to get at there is once you have your basic template, and especially once you have it set for all of the, if it's broad and broad enough to cover any type of request for need that needs to be considered in the built environment, right? As you all call it, then what does that look like? What are the base core elements that need to be a part of that request for need? And how do you standardize that so that everybody's using the same thing? It's like if you have to take notes, Brittany, right? What's a great template for taking notes? One that we use is first is the attendees. Definitely want to have the attendees there. You want to have the topic. You want to have the agenda. You want to have the key observations from the meeting. You want to have, if nothing else, um, action items, right?
Hmm.
What do you plan to do? When is it due? By whom? So that's what I mean by templates is you know these moments of information exchange are happening, but are we capturing the standard around how they should happen so that if a piece is missed, right, or if a piece is not needed due to the type of setting or context or whatever, right, then you know that automatically just by looking at the template,
Mhm,
right? And so
mhm.
maybe it's a general template, but then maybe you augment it, based on the context of the conversation, really.
Yep.
And I think that's just professional services, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, Melvin, I think that's a great point. Um, I will tell you that in my experience, templates really, really are very helpful. And I will say this, depending upon the project, it can vary quite extensively what the scope ask will be. Um, and the only reason why that is because um, it's based on the level of uncertainty that one has when they're about to enter into the project. Have they done a project like this before? Have they is this one of 5 of the same types of same type of build out? Maybe this is like a McDonald's as an example, or a Chipotle, and have they built out this exact same layout like 10 times, 50 times, 1,000 times already? That kind of project is going to have much less of a variability as to like what the business case is, what's the um, cost benefit analysis, what what are the considerations that you have to have in regards to like materials and how you're going to approach HVAC utilization. Like you're going to have much less variability when it comes to things like that when it's a plug and chug uh, kind of project. When it is something that is completely different than an organization has ever done before, they have no benchmark data. If they're building out like a data center and they've never built one out that size, hopefully data centers will be going away shortly because of our cloud computing capabilities these days. Um, but if there's something that's complex and original and unique, whereby somebody hasn't done this before, um, an owner organization is going to approach the RFP, RFN, using the request for need approach, or even go through validation to define the scope a little bit differently every single time. And I think part of that is just because of um, the level of uncertainty that one has when getting ready to embark on a project. So I like the idea of like templates in order to list out the kinds of questions you should be asking. Matter of fact, I worked on a template within the last couple of weeks to actually activate a project to request, not only to request annual dollars for them to be earmarked for the following year, but also to say, okay, we earmarked these budget dollars in order to utilize them the following year. But hey, leadership, do we now have approval to use these funds for this project once the project needs to be initiated? So we tweaked a form that we had previously. We've been tweaking this form for probably about 2 years now, trying to make it better, trying to make it more useful. And what we've done is there are a couple key areas of like just internal approvals that we wanted to make sure we were tracking. So we have a section for background, we have a section for scope, we have a section for dollars. And hi, Carolina. Welcome to the conversation. Um, and then we have another section in regards to like any additional attachments. Like it could be pictures of the existing site, could be any plans, what have you. But I mean, we went into detail as far as asking questions, as far as prompts, so that somebody can, under the background section, say, okay, well, what am I supposed to put here? What kinds of questions should I be asking myself and my team as I substantiate the reason why we need to embark onto this project? Similarly, for scope, what are the risks that we're avoiding as a result of moving forward with this scope? Similarly, for budget, we said, okay, well, we're going to need to know what's operational versus capital when we go into this project. And then, the kinds of attachments that we're looking for, we put a little bit more detail in a gray, font so that people know that that's something that can go away. They don't have to keep that set of questions. But I think when it comes to like RFPs, RFNs, RFQs, RFXs, whatever you want to call them, there's those abilities to do very similar things, and I've used templates like that before in the past, and they've been helpful from a standardization perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Brittany. Yeah, as you were explaining, kind of like, okay, so when I'm in a specific type of project and I know that that project is going to need, this many things, right? And that's a repeatable process because we've done that a million times versus one where we know we have a project, it's going to be brand new. We have a base set of features, but we'll need to flush the details out as we go. I get that one, right? That one is, I wouldn't say it's hard to make a template out of it. I would say the content that fills the template is not known ahead of time. But some of the things that are known are that one, you will be uh, dealing with feature requests, right? So there will be some sort of feature intake process by which new requirements can be gathered. Then there will be some process by which those requirements will be turned either voted on, agreed on, and turned into actual tasks for people to do. And then there's going to be some kind of tracking process involved. So in that case, again, looking less at the content and looking more at the process. How do you? And this is a lot like what Don, I think, is thinking about in the way he's building his product out is what are the pieces of the machine that need to be defined in order for me to create a steady feed, right? So again, taking the idea back to supply chain, I think assembly line, right? Um, Even though we're doing creative things, there is a bit of an assembly line process that gets in, employed, right? So one, your players. Like just think about it from like a we have to produce a play, right? A completely creative endeavor, right? Well, every play needs a certain number of things in place, right? You need the story, so you need your writers, you need your actors, right? And then you need a certain number of rehearsals, and then finally you need an audience, a time and a place to present, so on and so forth, right? So those are the structural pieces of the project that need to be defined, and that's the place that I'm looking at measuring where in industry do we have templates already defined for those uh, for those types of activities that basically watch or tag the meat of what we're doing with a specific motivation, context, right, and direction for why we're doing that, right? And so that's when you have that, it provides a way for you to measure how much of that goes into any given process. I hope that makes sense. So like with that, you could affect with a good template around, and I think this is how lead came about too, right? Lean,
To
not
some
lead, lean.
to some
Yeah,
degree, yes, the manufacturing a process definitely allowed for the consistency, for
right.
you to evaluate, like what is that repetition that you can plan for as far as activities goes. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so we're like throwing off all this data, and I see the data as the content, but the context under which we're throwing it off, like as we go about our lives, being project managers, product owners, whatever, right? That stuff is important. It's just it's barely being tracked as a standardized thing, right? Like you go and look at one person, they might be using, a certain tool that organizes that work effort for them. Um,
Yeah.
but like where's the ISO standard for it, right? It's like, hey, I got a project. Oh, you got a project? All projects consist of XYZ. like at a bare minimum, you need, this set of data points that you're capturing. And once we agree that, okay, those set of data points are being captured, you have a legitimate, a digitally legitimate, air quote project that we can now measure against the entire universe of projects that are being undertaken. And
Mhm.
because you're doing a certain type of project, you might extend that set of metadata to say, hey, this is a construction project, right? So just take it back to um, just the whole process of uh, paying for something, right? When you are dealing person to person, you pay for something by um, exchanging, money between the two parties, usually, right?
Yep.
So that was a transaction. It was an important transaction between two parties. One party needed something, the other party needed something. They found a way to transact in a way that satisfied each party. Transaction occurred. You go to business, they're still transacting with each other. It's just more layers, right? More information that's needed because the transaction has to be verified by more layers of participants. So that's what I mean by how do we know what the inventory of, templates are or standardized sets are for the types of information transaction, we're conducting on a regular basis all the time. There's If it doesn't exist, somebody needs to think about it because in effect everything that goes into creating digital assets, right? It's an
100%.
asset because you now know, right? It's like, oh, when I take in the data from, my, ERP and, my general ledger and, my business business entity management system, um now, I have something that I can do with that. I have enough to, like, I'm just going to be selfish. I have enough to start pulling together different tax documents, right? That I can submit to, federal and, state and local jurisdictions to begin to put a picture together that this is my tax position for the year,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
But I know I need those three systems and data from those three systems before that can happen.
Yeah, I'm following Melvin. That's good. I know Emirali, you came off mute
Yeah.
here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because you have a good data perspective. Reese, welcome to the room. Those couple who are listening on LinkedIn, really really happy to have you chiming in. Please feel free to chime in through chat. Um, but Amirali, if you have something to chime in with, love to hear it.
Sure then. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Isn't this a good day?
Well, now you're getting choppy, Amirali.
Okay. So, pardon me if I lose my connection, but okay. See, it's not a good day after all. Let's see. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, it's much better.
Nope, still not it. How about now? How about now?
Yes, much better. I can hear you, Amirali. But you can't.
Perfect, perfect. So
Okay.
yeah, I think to start off with what Melvin was asked. To start off with what Melvin was asking me about the can you hear me now? Because I thought there was a lag. It was, or I can chime in later.
I think you're okay. Oh, he just dropped. Okay. No worries. Just to kind of reset the room, we're actually having a really interesting conversation. Today we're talking about developer owner caused pains, and last week we had a really really great discussion about how to get the the information that we really need to get grounded in in the experts' hands that we're hiring in order to conduct the project itself, so that we can actually get like people collaborating really early on in the project. And thankfully, Amirali, he's talked about something that he's used in the past, called a request for need. But Melvin really wanted us to dive into like what is that standard that we are really discussing for projects, for construction projects. Like, how do we establish that like repetitive um, structure, if you will, on how people will embark, like actually do activities. And like he didn't go on to say this quite yet, but what goes on in my mind is what can we measure and how do we know we're going to get the best value for the results that we're asking people to contribute to the project. But what is that like roadmap, and how do you map that out, and how do you have that as some sort of standard for the project? So um, with that, Amirali, looks like you're back on. If you are able to speak, go ahead and chime in
Yeah,
now.
let's see if you guys can hear me now. Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're all good.
Perfect, perfect. I'm finally out of the gym, so I'm pretty sure you guys will be able to hear me now. But Melvin, to start off with what you wanted to ask, right? Um, um, RFN, right? Is there a template for it? And yeah, we did create a template for it, and it's so ironical. I'm from the construction industry, but this RFN um, actually came out of the ID projects that we deal with. And one thing that we kept on getting again and again is the requirement part of it, because we could not get the requirement in place. And that's why we like, hey, client, what do you want? Um, it's one thing to ask the vendors for all the information, but it's an entirely different thing to give them the information. And that's what we did. What we The first part of that RFN was basically all the information that we have for the project. Let's throw that out. Um, it included scope of work. It included day in the life of every or the specific software. So we did that. Them the project cost. We gave them the project schedule, everything. Once they know all this information, that's only then we went ahead and asked them a bunch of questions in terms of, hey, comment on our scope of work. Hey, you the expert, do you think that this cost and schedule are good estimates? Hey, vendor, you the expert, can you these are the top 10 pain points for us, and this is what the solution we want. Do you think that this is the future state? Tell us how you do that.
All right, Amirali, you're starting to break up
And
again. I'm
then
not sure why.
top of
Right at the sweet spot too.
that, um, at the end, we had because if you worked on ID projects, there's a list of requirements.
I'm just gonna move him to the audience because Amirali, your audio was breaking up. Apologies. Um, Unfortunately, we you started breaking up really at the good part where it sounded like you were making sure to confirm with the owner what it is that they really wanted after the experts were able to provide their recommendations. So I think that there's certainly value add in like the back and forth and refinement on what the scope is, because there can be questions about like in the template about the process, that standardized process. But defining the scope, Melvin, I find, which is why we're talking about like request for need, and when you're embarking on like an integrated form of agreement and a true IPD, lean IPD project, you're going to embark on a validation study where you literally pay people to define help you define your scope with you. Um,
Yeah.
that alone sets everybody up on the same marching beat, and they know exactly what the expectations are in order to move forward on the project with certainty. If you move forward without defining that scope really, really clearly, then you're going to end up pivoting a lot. If you say, okay, well, to your point, like we know the general scope of the project, we can just move forward, and you haven't defined, like as an example, what building systems you're going to use. Say you want to have I don't know, as an example, you want to build a steel building or a concrete building, and you don't know which direction you're going to go. That's going to be a big change if you choose to change that midway in the design process. That's not an easy change to come back from. You're going to have to restructure a lot of your design components, how everything is running through the building, even how the foundations are going to be designed. Like that is going to be a big hit to your project. Similarly, with how you're going to be managing your HVAC. So if you can make those decisions on different components of like how you want to go about moving forward with the scope, even if you don't design them yet, those kinds of decisions and the understanding the benefits of them as an owner and as an entire project team, like what efficiencies can you get from an energy standpoint? Are you trying to meet sustainability goals? Okay, great. How do those things actually tie into what your overarching goals are, right? Do you care about sustainability at all? Do you just want to like get this building out to market so you can start making money? Like these are the kinds of questions that you really, really need answers to, and those things define the scope, which is why like you really need that charter, if you will, which is part of a templated process, right? Like if you pursue your PMP, the PMI Institute is great with having like different processes in place for you to identify, okay, well, what is your scope? How do you make sure you have clarity on that? And how do you have that as like your single source of truth as far as what your scope is? Um, and you're always just building off of that versus coming to different conclusions throughout the project. But it's structured differently, right? Like the validation study, you're going to go a little bit more deeply, and you will have involved individuals who are able to speak to like why those components are necessary to pull into the design, or at least have a voice in that conversation versus an owner just putting a charter together without having those experts in the room to help define those those things with the benefits and the risks identified with each one of those decisions. So I don't know if
Absolutely.
that answers, or I don't even know if that fills in Amarali with what you were saying, but I hope it does.
Yeah, it was like the little bit that we were able to get. I wonder if Amirali's in an easier location to talk now. He might be on the road if he's on his way back from the gym. But um, thank you for recapping that, Brittany. And then I was writing notes, and I could one of the two things that popped out to me that were important to identify. You know, it's like the reason you have a request for need is to help you refine and or define your scope, right? It's like, hey, I want to do this. Am I thinking about this the right way? And is there anything that I'm missing? Do I have the right assumptions about this? And so um, it perfectly defines that part in your process where you're about to embark. And before you embark, you're doing your research and you're talking with people to get clarity on what it will take for you to embark on this journey, this new adventure, right? This new project that you're about to undertake. For me, when I'm doing any type of renovation work, the first thing I do is hit up YouTube to see if people are using any new materials, new approaches that might help my work go faster. In construction, uh, and in other projects, right? especially when you don't have that subject matter expertise, but you're on the hook, if you will, at work to oversee the project. That will curate the right resources to deliver whatever that product or project is that you've been put in charge of. In those cases, yes, you need some help from the professionals to give you an idea of if you're thinking about this the right way. What is the ballpark, number you should be thinking about? Is the ballpark effort you should be thinking about? Where are the resources? Are they easy to get? Are they hard to get? Be it people resources or material resources, right? So these are all things that, again, define what I said is the really interesting part of this. They define the scope, or not the scope, but the context of why you are doing that part of the step, right? So if you imagine every human undertaking as being like a grand project, right? There's always at least that initial step of, do I think I can do this? And then if you were to do it in a decision tree, it would be, do I have all the information I need to try to do this? Now, some people go after the information, some people don't. But the point is, maybe that should always be a step, is that you ask, do I have enough information to get started?
Well, that's a great point, Melvin. And I will tell you that being on the owner side of things, most of the time, most owners don't have the right information that in order for them to make the decision of embarking on a project or not, they have no idea. It's like, we want this space to be done. Can we do it? Yeah, sure. I'm sure we have some funding, and I think we know some people we can hire in order to do this. I'm sure. Yeah, yeah. I'm sure we can figure it out. Like, that is literally the process that I've seen some of my clients go down the path of, and then they realize they're in deep. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then they go and look for an owner's rep or an architect that can, like, really provide them some expertise on how to go like the project management side of things. Like, what are the steps that I actually should be going down so that I don't do things backwards and I don't have these unexpected costs come about. Like, something as simple as establishing a budget before you embark on a project and looking at, like, how other people have done projects of similar size, scope, quality. Like, most people don't even know where to look for that information. They have no clue. So they talk to a friend of a friend who knows somebody who's an architect, or who knows somebody who, right? Which, there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. You should be using your resources. But does that resource have expertise in the kind of work that you want to have done? Sometimes no. And that's where people get into problems. Oftentimes too, um, to your point, there's no standard. There's if there's no standard and there's no template for going about a project that every single person knows who's in this industry, guess what you're going to encounter? You're going to encounter lots of variability of people doing things, very different things, and building off of something that's just very inconsistent
Exactly.
as a process. And that is how this
Exactly.
entire industry works.
I could just tell from like these conversations that I've been sitting in. It's like, oh wow, they all have great ideas about how to attack certain problems in the space, but they're all very different approaches, right? None of them, bad, would you say, at all? It's just what they need out of their, like, for instance, when the gentleman said that, well, he prefers to not have that much clarity, right, from his vendor, because then that gives him the wiggle room to, maybe um, use that to his advantage, right? To give them enough of what they want and then be able to tease them into more work. Everybody's seen that approach. It's like, yeah, yeah, they think they know what they want, but they don't really know what they want. So we're just going to do this assessment for them. They'll figure out from the assessment that they really don't know what they want. Then they'll hire us back, right, to do a little bit more work. I swear to God, Brittany, that's like, and no offense to anybody, um, sorry for my language, that happens so much, like
Mhm.
in consulting, because people look at consulting and they say, "Oh, it's too expensive." But what we can have them do is just come in and take a look really quick. Let's see how much free consulting we can get, free advice we can get before we get started, right?
Yep.
Um, and from our perspective, it's like you're either paying now or you're paying later. We're happy to do, like the low budget thing, but this is kind of our space. This is what we do. We know exactly what goes into these, types of engagements, and so when we when we are giving you a quote and giving you a process, it's coming from our experience of having to do it, 100 or more times. It's not because we just want to charge you a lot of money, right? And it's not to say that you can't skip some steps, but if you want the I feel safe giving you this estimate number and effort, um, um, uh, uh, you know, report, this is what it is, right? We can work from here to trim things back so that you understand exactly what you're losing. That might be a creative process, and we might enter a zone where it becomes really risky that we can stand behind the estimate. But if we at least start from a base understanding of, hey, you want to do this, this process consists of this many steps or this many phases, and within these phases, you can either, add some color or creativity, right? Spend a little bit longer if you like, right? Spend a little bit more money here if you like. But ultimately, if you don't have these things, you're not getting a pizza out of the oven at the end of the day, right? It's
Or
like you're not
yeah.
going to bake a pizza by starting with a hot dog, you know?
That is so true, but I like what you said about, like, you have the ability to provide input at these various stages. With construction, what I think that people tend to forget is you can't make decisions on particular items after certain things are built without an exponential cost issue, right? Because you will have had spent the money, installed, spent, like, basically spent the money on labor and materials, and you will have missed the opportunity to make a very low cost change if you make a decision really too late. So, I think there's from what you're describing, i- i- in other industries, it may not have as huge of an impact, but where you're building something in a physical space where there are many, many components and many, many designers who are designing those components, where those components will be coming together in a physical space, the ship will have left the port at different instances for different things, and it makes a much larger impact and a much larger headache than perhaps other industries.
Yeah, Brittany, I can totally understand how that could happen. It's like, hey, we want to, install the furniture and, we want to build the building. Now we want to put the floors in, right? And it's like, wait a minute. You do know that, you know, it won't look as aesthetically pleasing as you might have hoped if we have to work around all the hardware installation points in the floor. Not to mention that's going to take, the carpenters or whomever it is that you hire, to do those calculations and workarounds, given there are things in the space already, versus having your floor laid first, then putting in, other layers of finishes, afterwards. It's just very similar,
You
like,
got it.
I want to put the wallpaper up after I hang the blinds, it's like, what? Like, that's going to either cause you to take that down or have something really not aesthetic, or not to your liking if we do it exactly the way you asked us to do it in the order that you asked us to do it.
You 100% get it, Melvin, but oftentimes it's not just those simple aesthetic things, right? Like, it has down effects where it affects not only one scope, but it might affect like five different trades, and five different trades have to come back out and do something in a particular space, right? Like, so it's the amount of people that you impact, it's the coordination that you impact, it is the time. So when you talk about templates, it's there's a lot to that, but there's a lot of creativity on how to go about things too, that goes into like planning the work. And I think that, like, if you're building a subdivision as an example, and you have very again, that repetitive approach to building maybe, I don't know, 5 different models of houses, right? You're going to have a very systematic approach where it's very similar, set of durations that you expect shipping to be for these particular products, or these are going to be locally available for pickup, right? And then you're going to be able to install them at this particular duration, and it's going to be fairly standard. But if you're doing a larger project where there are like complex variabilities, and you've never used, this particular type of geothermal um, HVAC design, and it includes radiant heat. Like if you're doing stuff you've never done before, I feel as though those templates, um, you're going to have to figure out how to um, make those templates y- worthwhile for utilization in order for you to get worthwhile data, so that you can get the best value out of that data long term, right? So it's about like, you have to ask the question, like, what are you measuring now? It may be something slightly different than what you're measuring for something that's a bit more repetitive and more certain when it comes to measuring a task or something like that. So just throwing that out there.
Oh, no, yeah, and
Yeah.
I was gonna, Brittany, thanks for bringing that up. This was one of the things that I forgot to mention, is that at the planning phase, or at the hey, I think I might want to, phase, like just talking about that phase 0, where you gut check. Like the other part of the gut check is, well, how familiar am I with it, right? And that can be applied, probably at some lower levels as well, right? When it comes to the point where, you're measuring, how well do I think I can measure this? Like how fast do I think I can implement this, right? It did, and this is where digital pieces come in to assist. Is it's hard to know how that stuff works out in paper and in the physical world, because it can move on you, right? And that's the joy of technology, is that you can either have a high level of detail to your process, or you can have a low level of detail to your process, right? It's easier to, erase things from your paper, or start from a more blank template, right? And then add or remove the complexity as, the endeavor, changes context. So that, to your point, if you're installing something for the first time, um, and at this point, if you're talking about um, measuring your ability to engage, right, or defining, that kind of like request for need, or scope refinement, scope definition perspective, that you'll get that data at that point, right? Of, wait a minute, we have these new outlets that we think we want to install. How long is this going to take? If you know that that's what you want to do at that point, right? And so that's the whole point of the profession, is to tell you that's going to take longer. I think it's going to take 40%, 50, 30, 20%, longer time, slash more money to do. And you say, really? Are you sure? I don't know. I've never done it before, but I know a guy who said he did it, and he said it took him a little bit longer. So let's just put that number out there for it. Not preparing, right, for the eventuality is worse than having a contingency, right? And so I think
Yep.
contingency is just a huge aspect of why you want to treat, those, phases of engagement as, first class citizens to pay attention to and understand why you're doing it. And that's explicitly why, again, I want that kind of industry nod, that yes, every project has this, kind of phased, aspect to it, right? There's detail and there's layers of detail as you come into it, but depending on, or as we have executed over time, we've noticed these things. And so that's the measurable part to me, Brittany, is that you start to know how fast people in certain regions are able to do certain things, how fast different projects is no um secret why a lot of data centers are located near bodies of water or in cooler climates, right?
Yep,
Somebody got the idea over time
totally.
that this
Marcus,
makes more sense. Yeah.
you had something to chime in with.
I was just trying to figure out if this seems like a topic that Amorale would be all over. Is there a reason why Amorale's hanging out in the audience? Did he show up on stage?
He did show up on stage and his audio connection was a little bit fragmented. So he started off really, really great and then it got really choppy. So unfortunately, Amarali, unless you get to a
That
really
Georgia
great,
connection.
yeah,
Oh
connection,
man,
you know, we'll bring you back up when you get a chance.
Am- Amorale's audio was so good today. Like he's been in a few rooms that I've been in. It's been it was good. I don't know where he went. That he ended up messing up his connection, but hopefully you can get that fixed, Morales. Yeah, get off that T-Mobile.
And you know what, Manny, welcome to the room. Hopefully you've been enjoying the conversation. I know you've been sticking around here. We've been talking about developer or owner cost pains. Um, what's really great is, I've been working in construction for what is it, 14 years now or so, give or take, engineering and construction. And Melvin has a computer science background, and we're talking about how to think about this from a project management perspective where both of us have expertise. And how do you recognize the consistent things that you can maximize, or optimize your process by understanding, okay, well, what is the past data that you have to work off of in order to inform like what you're measuring on a project. We've been talking about pains for the past couple of weeks on we've been, for those of you who are listening, we've been talking about pains who are really that are impacted by embarking on projects specifically caused by owners. And these same inconsistencies show up back to back to back every time we talk about the pains. And I love the conversation that Melvin is leading us through, in talking about how can we standardize um, certain strategies, I guess, of how you embark on the work, so that people can have an expectation
What
of what the certainty will be like.
there's a Melvin. There's a process. What Brittany. We haven't like went down or tried to learn or anything else like that. But lean tax planning seems to be a concept that has been talked about multiple times within our rooms. I guess I got to sit. Me and Brittany will have to sit down and actually watch a YouTube video or just interview Jason Schroeder himself and convince him to get on the platform so we can just kind of talk about this type of stuff. But this is the type of conversation, Brittany, I wanted to have in the lean construction roundtable is this type of processes and planning and being able to just templatize or standardize some of this stuff. Maybe we can try to go ahead and try to see if we can do something around that, or try to get a whole bunch of project managers from different fields and try to have a conversation around that. Maybe we can reach out to Lee and ask her if she wants to host something around that in her room or in here, so we can just kind of mix it up a little bit, um, and we can kind of go into detail around some of that stuff. There's also a project or a group that's in uh, where is it? Tennessee, and they have a methodology called Vested, and they have an approach and they have a systematic approach about how they are going through more partnerships, kind of teaching it from an enterprise level. One of their clients that they trained and taught was JLL. Another client that they taught was another company. I'm trying to think of the other company's name now. Um, ISS, which is the facility management firm, and they do anything from high, staffing uh, the employees as far as um, staffing the employees as far as who's going to be doing the cleaning, to security, to even down to the facility management of the actual like place, of like how you take care and maintenance them. Um, I think it's over 500,000 employees, which is crazy. Um, that's another organization that is bought into, invested. Um, P&G is another company, another organization that has trained or taught about vested. One, I think the thing that's cool about P&G is they're looking for multiple ways to get into more collaborative uh, agreements with their vendor supplier relationships, because they notice within their organization, if people are either collaborating together or sharing the risk and the reward together, um, they make more money, and the people who work at those companies um, have more pride about the work that they actually do as well. So, but the company, one, going back to my statement, one was University of Tennessee vested. Brittany, I think we should probably write down something to try to get her on the platform so we can do some type of interview, not on a Friday, and we could do trying to get some trying to get Lee to do some type of collaboration as far as what Melvin was talking about as far as project management. I think that'll be two awesome rooms. Uh, oh, we didn't even talk about advanced work packaging, which is trying to systematize some of the stuff, Melvin, which is a whole other process, which some people disagree with. And we're trying to figure out how to wrap that up and package it, no pun intended, so people can understand. Because people are trying to figure out what's the best way to systematize some of these processes and tools within construction so people could either understand them so they can implement them easier, or to say, hey, or just question, is the way that we've always done it how we should be doing it?
Yeah, that's you
And
got it exactly. That's spot on, Marcus. That's the whole point, right? And you just before you uh came in to add that piece, that was one of the pieces that or one of the conversation points that me and Brittany brought up is a lot of people just don't know what they don't know, right? And even if, as I'm just like sitting here Googling, all right, where's the lean, proposal process, right? And, you have some, yeah, right? Like, it's funny. You would think it's like, well, these guys have been in the space for a while, so they must have some kind of standard for how they might,
So I'll tell you.
suggest or
So
advise.
so Melvin, even though that is something that we talk about a lot, it in the grand scheme of the industry, it is a very small percentage of people who actually embark in lean or collaborative contracting methods. That is very atypical, which is why we talk about it so much because it's so beneficial that everybody should know about it. But
Right.
what you'll find is more design bid build approaches to work, or even design build. That is, I mean, those are considered the most common delivery methods. Um,
Mhm.
and so if you do a search, that's what you're going to find. You're going to find likely those two. You might find CM at risk. You might find, I don't know, a couple more guaranteed maximum price, which
Mhm.
is still design bid build, but like they're variations of the same thing. So yeah,
Mhm.
you're not to your point about templates, there's an organization called the Construction Management Association of America.
Mhm.
I went through a training, I don't know, it's got to be at least 10, maybe 12 years ago now. I went through training with them specifically to get a better understanding of like what are these contractual templates, what exactly are these delivery methods, and the Construction Management Association of America, they have done a really really great job of documenting the most commonly used approaches. They even give resources on like what contractual language should you be using. They have vetted contracts that you can use if you take, pay for this course, that kind of thing. And to Marcus's point, there are so many construction pains. Is this the way to go about it? These are the questions that like I've been asking for years. And the more and more I dig into like this lean contracting approach, everybody who I've spoken to, they say, yep, it is more fulfilling to go through this shared risk, shared reward, collaborative contracting model. I actually am happier. I spend more quality time with my kids and my family and the things that I actually like to do because the work that I put into the project, it is so much more fulfilling, and I actually can spend my time more wisely instead of putting out fires.
Right, which sucks because fires are always caused by hindsight or not enough foresight. Well, the same thing. um, but you know what I mean. It's like
Yep.
you didn't plan well enough ahead of time, right? Or you didn't plan to plan. Is really what I was trying to get at. It's like a lot of times, what I'm encountering in enabling software systems for people who have these delicate business processes is that it's not that we didn't plan the system well. We didn't plan for the downside tail risk, right? Of what happens if the worst thing happens and you have failures and things that you didn't expect you would have failures in, right? That's where you can be blindsided. And so, what would be nice, Brittany, going into these things is okay, I'm developing a new feature. What is it like to develop a new feature, right? And just talk it through, just like, I'm starting a new project. Developing a new feature is the same as starting a new project. All right, do I feel like I have the skill sets to do it? Yes. Am I comfortable in this medium? Yes, maybe, right? If I'm not comfortable, then what, right? And so the whole point of it all is, do people feel less inclined to go through these steps because it feels tedious? My guess is yes, right? So I'll answer my own question there. But in retrospect, do they feel that it's tedious for the dollar amount that they're about to engage in to get it done, right? Or the amount of energy that's going to be necessary to get it done that they assume is going to be necessary to get it done, or even the level of risk involved in not getting it right. So I have a
Yeah.
decision matrix up here. Yeah. So it's part of this decision matrix. Brittany, it's like, okay, before you buy us to come and do something, have you thought about what the top business concerns are, right? Are you guys experiencing, like a people problem? You have talent, attraction or retention, pressure that you're trying to resolve. Basically, you don't have enough skilled people to do the work. Do you have an implementation problem where all of a sudden you have some brand new requirements and it's taking people, off guard? You have smart people who could get it done, but you don't necessarily have the bandwidth to take it on, or the fact that you need to take it on has enough political weight behind it that you want to maybe distance yourself. Does that make sense?
Well, yes. Oh man.
So yeah, so that's that one. And then I had like, cost reduction and strategic investment as other, you know, potential drivers as to like why you might choose to go a certain direction. And then and above that, I have some of those other considerations. It's like, so I'm taking each of those drivers and I'm pushing them through, an evaluation on, whether or not there's a delivery urgency, there's a risk to not getting it done, right?
Yeah.
So like if the downside is, hey, I don't do it and nothing happens, okay, right? I probably don't have a huge need to embark on this. I can probably wait a little bit.
Yeah,
And then
totally. And you know what? We
yeah.
used to go through a similar evaluation as when I was working at a consulting firm. When
Mhm.
when we would have projects that come on our doorstep, people are saying, "Hey, would you like to work for us?" That kind of thing. or would you like to embark on, submit a proposal in this RFP? Either whatever way it came to us, we would always go through a similar evaluation. Have we done this before? Are we equipped to do this? Is it like, what are the goals of the company that is pursuing this? Is this something we even want to be involved with? Is this a market that we want to be involved with? Do we want to
Hmm.
pursue more work in this? Like, so we went through a very similar evaluation of steps, and I think that's huge to, as you're thinking about engaging in a project, you should be going through those check boxes. Absolutely.
Yeah. Versus people telling you, hey, you need to do XYZ because such and such saved a lot of money doing it, right? Everybody's, in that same you need to invest in Bitcoin, it's about to blow up, kind of scenario every day, right? With every purchase we're about to make. And especially with those purchases that are foreign to us, right? I won't be able to use that whole Bitcoin is about to blow up example probably in a year or two, but
Oh
I think
man.
it resonates right now. Yeah. But no, this is a good conversation.
BitConnect. You could do that one.
Well, I talked over it accidentally.
Do it again, Marcus.
BitConnect. You could do that one.
Did you make that one, Marcus?
Not yet. Not yet. We got to
That,
put
is
that
that
one
his
on.
voice?
Nah,
That's not your
nah,
voice? Oh.
nah, nah. Nah. I didn't make that one. That was my actual voice. You didn't. You never. You didn't see the guy from BitConnect? Hey,
No.
hey, hey! You didn't see that dude?
No, I don't think
Oh
I
no!
have.
Okay, for those of you who do not know,
Oh my goodness!
Marcus, I think you should post it in the chat because it's a good laugh. Is he the same guy that
Oh
says,
man!
and pump it and dump it and pump it and dump it?
Yes, he is. He is the same guy. He
That's
is the same guy. Oh man! I don't know if you're still live, but
We
yeah,
are
he
still
is the
very
same
much
guy.
live, and we have a few
no.
people watching, and it is quite funny. So that's why I want you to put it in the
I
chat.
you know what? You know what? We should. I, I will find the video and we'll play part of the video. I
Man,
just
I
have to
can't wait.
find. I just have to find the right part.
All right, well, keep us posted, Marcus.
Well, next time I can't wait to hear Amirali come in and do his piece on that because I know he has great content and input in that direction just based on how I've heard him think about things and some, just hearing some of the actions that he's taken on his own to, just kind of, you know, for lack of a better phrase, like bake some of the crazy out of the process.
Absolutely. Amarali did say something really profound yesterday. There was we are hosting a room similar name, just in a different club as a guest to the Everything Construction Club. And we had quite a few people who were kind of newbies in the construction space. Like they had just done their first project. Like there's one woman who had just done their first construction project, and she was talking about how many challenges she just like faced every single day. She was putting out fires every single day, and it was just really, really stressful for her. It was a
Mhm.
residential project and that. And, Amarali asked her a really great question. He said, well, how many of those problems did you document?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Really simple but profound question. And she as a newbie didn't really spend her time doing that. She spent her time addressing the problems, right? But there's
Yeah.
so much value to understanding what happened and how to think about, like, okay, what is that lessons learned that
Hmm.
now I can pivot and do something really, even if it's just slightly different next time, like back to like, what is the template? What is the process? How do you go about doing this? If even you build that for yourself, or look at industry data and like say, okay, well, industry data is telling me that if I use an integrated form of agreement, I'm going to have 30 to 40 more percent certainty on what the budget is going to be and what the schedule is going to be. If there's industry data that's telling you that, or if there's industry data that's telling you that most projects, you have no idea what the cost is going to be of the project when you start, like within a range of, I don't know, 60%. Like you don't know what it is in traditional projects. That is a problem. Like
Hmm.
that's very uncertain budgeting. And don't quote me on those stats, but I've seen graphs out there that speak to that, right? That like it's
Hmm.
it's very very true that you do not have a good sense of the certainty of what you're actually about to embark on when you enter into doing a construction project. And it is because of past lack of past knowledge as an owner and lack of asking early enough on in the project.
Yeah, I'm there with you. The analogy that I have for that one, Brittany, as you were talking about that, I was just thinking that sounds a lot like cooking. It's like you can scramble an egg, right, and be a little off in your timing, or the ingredients that you use. Like I'll just throw some stuff together like an omelet, right? Still gonna taste good. No one's gonna judge you poorly, on that outcome. But try doing that with something that you're baking, right? You're still cooking, a totally different animal, and that's where your uncertainty will definitely come back.
Marcus and I
To
have an
haunt you.
argument about how to bake things all the time. Even like something like we just got a waffle maker. We had one before and it went kaput and then we got a new one. Like, and Marcus loves to experiment when it comes to making waffles. And I'm like, yo, don't experiment too much because it's chemistry.
Yeah.
But he loves, loves, loves to do it. And so, and like what he'll do, which is really great, he'll go to
Henry,
restaurants and test out different, recipes and say, okay, let me go ahead and try this at home. Man, sometimes the experiments, I just have to shake my head and say, look, I'm gonna eat some toast, Marcus. Thank you for breakfast. uh,
What could possibly go wrong? It's a waffle maker. Oh
chemistry was
yeah,
made by experimenting.
indeed, indeed. Now,
yeah.
what's interesting, it reminds me of that guy Alwyn, who is like he kind of helped put that like gastro something something stuff like on the map. And he would host like some of the Iron Chefs, and I think he would host Iron Chef if I'm not mistaken. But he's very experimental, right, in his cooking. But he's
Mhm.
also coming from the perspective of a chemist, and so he's like breaking down what that ingredient is for, you know, um, and you know because he knows the chemistry of that ingredient, he knows how to replace it with something else to achieve the same consistency or texture or flavor or whatever it is. But it's definitely done from a very scientific perspective.
And that's the
And I
kind
like
of templates I want,
hmm
right? Like, I want the
Yeah.
templates whereby you can say, okay, expert people who understand the chemistry of how these things come together. How
hmm
then do you create a plan in order for all of these components to still be hit?
Yep.
But we still have to redefine what that, back to what we were talking about, redefine what that scope is specific to this current customized recipe that we're throwing
Exactly.
together. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It could be as simple as like, oh, what glue will we use to, do X, Y, Z, right? It's
Do
like,
we need glue?
do we need it, right? If it's a binder and the temperature, is just right, can you get away with slapping some drywall, paste on the back of that thing, and that'll hold it,
Well,
considering we're gonna get, moisture or whatever.
there's carpet out there right now, right? Like there's a carpet
Hmm.
out there that, typically somebody was talking about this the other day. Typically you use, standard glue in order to adhere like carpet towels to your typical flooring that you have in a commercial space.
Hmm.
And there's a carpet out there with interface. Yeah, I think it was Felipe talking about it the other
Clicks
day.
together, huh?
Yeah, what it does is
Puzzle piece.
they built it in such a way where not only is it fully recycled
Mhm.
carpet, but it is also built in such a way where you do not need adhesive at all whatsoever, and it stays in place. So
Man, that's
you
so cool. Do you have the name of it?
yeah, there's a the name of the company is Interface. It's a very commonly used carpet company. Um, a
Okay.
lot of people are familiar with it. It's they're very focused on cradle to cradle um,
Mhm.
approaches so that they can, reduce their impact on the carbon footprint. I've used them many times over. They're a great company. So yeah, but there are other companies who are working on like similar solutions, like how to use less glue or how to like it's something as simple as that. Knowing
Mhm.
the different installation methods and planning for it, yeah, these are the kinds of things that you have to think, okay, well, how do you fit this custom thing into this standardized box?
Right, right. Yeah, no, this is cool. I like the patterns. Oh, I like those.
We got
Yep.
Melvin talking about interface now.
Yeah, I'm there. I'm there with you.
All
But
right.
yeah, that's yeah. Awesome, awesome set. Again, next time I hope we get a chance to hear more from Amirali on this topic, and maybe start to define, just what that cage looks like. It's like, oh, I'm about to embark. What are all the phases of embarking, right? And then from there, relate that very generic principle to, all right, I'm in a construction setting now, and it's this kind of project. And to your point, like, which ingredients to start pulling together and what they do, right, in the mix to be able to know where you have flexibility to swap in or out, or be more specific or less
Mhm.
specific.
That's it. That's it. So, Marcus, it appears as though you have a video to play. Are you going to be able to play that or no? Do you know how to do it? Okay, Melvin, you tell us if you can hear this, okay?
Okay.
Can you hear that?
Wait, can you
No,
hear it?
not yet.
Give me.
I wonder, should I just put the mic up to it, Marcus? It's kept playing through the computer. That's why I said, should we just put it through that mic?
You guys want to send me a link to it?
Marcus posted it in the chat. I think that's what we'll do. We'll send you a link,
Okay.
Melvin, and what we'll do
Yeah.
is close up the room because I don't think that we'll figure out how to do this on live at the moment.
We disobeyed step zero, right? It's like, do we have the
Do we have I hold on, Marcus. Hold on. Hold on. Your something is playing. Okay.
Uh-oh.
All right, Melvin, here we go. We were
All right.
playing the live and it was coming through. So let's try this one
No,
more
cool.
time,
I just want
guys.
to hear it one more time. Yeah.
Ready? One, two. So, just
Oh my gosh, that's so rich. This has to be what? Had to be what? 2014?
so this was 2018, and
What?
and I will.
2018? Somebody was still talking
Nah,
like that?
Was it
it
replayed in
was earlier than
2018?
that. It was earlier than that.
Okay,
This
so
has to be 2014, man.
Yeah,
I'm
it's faster.
telling you.
okay, so in no way, shape, or form, just for the record, we are not recommending anything in any way that recommends that you do anything or consider BitConnect in any way. The recommendation, for the record, is for you to do additional research on
His
BitConnect.
wife was right. It was a scam. His wife
Right.
was right. It was a
Yeah.
scam.
It was
He
definitely a
It
he
scam.
was
was
a
wrong
scam.
about his decision.
And we didn't get to the pump and dump part, but that part's hilarious. So if we did put the link in the chat if you do want to finish the video. But with that, we are really just excited to continue this conversation, guys. Thanks for those who are listening online. We're happy to always have you guys join us when you can on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitch, on Twitter. These conversations are important to have because we're thinking about ways how to get some consistency. And um, if you are interested in participating in the conversation, or if you have any good ideas on how to hurdle these owner-caused construction pains, do chime into the conversation. Send me a note, whatever platform you're listening on this. Listening to this conversation on. We'd love to have you. Melvin is instrumental in these conversations to think about these things from a more data focused perspective, and we're trying to learn from him as well on how to build in some consistency and approach that's really going to help this industry. So with that, everyone, thank you and have a good night. Marcus, Melvin, did you guys have anything else you wanted to close up with?
Construction pains!
Oh, that was great. I think that's a perfect note to end on, Melvin.
Love you guys.
All right, love you guys too. Bye.
But